Right, so first, where did you do ROTC?
I did ROTC at a school, Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. It was called Bloomsburg University. It was a small Division II school, maybe about 8,000 students at the time.
All right, second, overall, did you have a good experience?
I did. I was kind of older for my class, so for me, not only was I a cadet, but I also felt like someone's big brother. You know, because everyone was always coming to me for advice, because I had started out in the Navy as an enlisted personnel prior to switching over to the Army into ROTC. So yeah, I loved it. I had a really good experience.
What was your favorite experience overall?
My favorite experience, as I said, since I was older, I don't think anything was so physically demanding of me, and also intellectually demanding at all. But between your junior year and your senior year of ROTC, it used to be called Advanced Camp. They changed names like every other year, so I might have gone back to Advanced Camp. But it's a 31-day training event out in Fort Lewis, Washington. Now it's called Joint Base Lewis McChord. But it was an opportunity to test out all your leadership abilities. You had opportunity to be a platoon leader. You go out into the field for almost 2 weeks to do land navigation, platoon sticks, which is basically squad training exercises. Shows your leadership ability and how well you can organize a team to work towards a common goal.
What was your greatest benefit out of ROTC, like best lesson learned or thing that it gave you?
Maybe kind of dovetailing off of that last question, it taught me how to be a better leader. It taught me how to motivate people to do things that they normally wouldn't do. When I was growing up, I wasn't that assertive. You know, I was kind of the guy that always took directions. So what it helped me do was it just put me in those opportunities where I had to lead, and at that point I just kind of just took over and did what I now found what I had internally, and I love to foster teamwork. So I benefited that, so it helped me foster some teamwork, and yeah, that's about it.
Did you get a scholarship through ROTC?
I didn't get a scholarship. However, since I was prior Navy before switching over to Army ROTC, I did get the GI Bill, and so that, that's 4 years of benefits, and you pay like $100 a month for a year when you first come in. And I actually used the GI benefits to put me through my last 2 years of school, last 2 years of ROTC. Because I came in, I didn't go straight 4 years ROTC.
Yeah.
I just did the last 2 years of ROTC before I got commissioned.
What was the hardest part overall of the program?
I think as I said, it wasn't physically demanding. To me, I don't think it was mentally demanding at all. I actually had fun doing it. I think the hardest part at the time was I was slightly older, and at the time where I actually went away, I had been with my wife at the time, and it was the first time we were ever apart, especially for those 31 days. And I think that was probably the hardest part is dealing with being away from your loved ones, and that was the initial 31 days out of my whole life of being gone. So.
Was the transition from ROTC into the Army hard for you?
No, as I said, I was prior service before that, so I understood what it took to make sure you do things right. Don't go against the grain. You get to a new unit, you just got to mind your business. You don't come off too headstrong, and then once you fit in, then you can do things. But do things your way. But no, I didn't find it difficult because I had already been in the military before I even switched over to the Army. So.
I know you were an enlisted guy before, but when you went through ROTC, were you prepared to be an officer at the program? After the program?
Mm-hmm. Oh, after the program? Oh, definitely, yes. As I said, they put you in a lot of opportunities to be a motivator, be a leader. Once a week, you'll do these exercises. Maybe go out and do land navigation, do squad training exercises, and your professors in military science, or whoever your trainers are, they'll put you in those roles, and they'll actually grade you. And the good part about that too is if you did something wrong, they'll let you do something wrong, but at the end they'll come back, they'll grade you, they'll give you an after actions review or report and say, hey, this is what you did wrong. And I did a lot of things wrong in the beginning, but with all those corrections over the 2 years that I was there, and I came out kind of understanding. Don't put people in situations where you wouldn't do things to yourself. I wouldn't ask them to do things I wouldn't do myself, and you just got to be a people person and understand and tell them that there are things that are gonna be terrible, but we're gonna do it together, and you end up doing it together.
Yeah, if you did it all again, would you choose to? I know you enlisted and then went to ROTC. Would you choose to do all 4 years of ROTC, or go to an academy, or?
No, I would choose to do all 4 years of ROTC. Unfortunately, I didn't have the mentorship or the leadership when I first went to school, and I put myself through school in the first couple of years when I was just out of high school. I just didn't have anyone pushing me to do well, and I kind of didn't do so well the first couple of years of school, so I dropped out and kind of worked for a couple of years in the civilian world. But yeah, I wish I would have stuck with it up front and done the 4 years in ROTC and been commissioned at a younger age. But now, I look back at it now and I would have done it, but then I'm like, well, if I did it different, I wouldn't have the life I have now. So it's kind of a hard balance. But yeah, I would have definitely probably done it when I was younger, right out of high school, and kept going. So,
what would be your number one piece of advice to someone going into ROTC?
my piece of advice is, and I taught ROTC as well. So not only did I go, but I taught ROTC at NC State in North Carolina, and a lot of the new cadets coming in were very scared. I guess it's the fear of the unknown. But if someone's going into ROTC, I tell them it's a great program. It's not that difficult. One, it keeps you in shape. Two, there's a lot of camaraderie. And I'm telling you, if you continue on and you get commissioned, you're less than 1% of the population's ever done it. And it's a really great feeling, very prideful institution. I've never wanted for any of my family's needs. They've always given me housing. They've always given me food. I've never wanted. So I would tell people, even if they're not in there for life, even if they don't want to stay in 20 years, shoot, stay in there for the 4 or 6 years, whatever your initial commitment is. Take the GI Bill. Go back, to get your master's. Maybe convert it over. Well, they have a 9/11 GI Bill now, or post 9/11 GI Bill, which means you can give it to your family members. Get those benefits. Even after 4 years, you still get them. 4 to 6 years, whatever your initial enlistment is. But yeah, I would do it on a heartbeat. And I'm trying to get my daughters to do it as well, but we'll see what happens. I don't know. Maybe it'll work. I don't know.
Well, thank you for your time.
Oh shoot! Yeah, that was.
Okay, so first, where did you do ROTC?
I went to St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota.
Did you have a good experience overall?
Yeah, my ROTC experience was very good. I think I learned a lot from it, and in the end, it provided a profession that has worked out well for me. So, absolutely.
What was your favorite experience out of all 4 years of ROTC?
Favorite experience? There were a lot, but I think for me, participating in what they call the Ranger Challenge team in competition. I'm a pretty big sports guy, and I like competition and just the idea and all the benefits of being on a team and a team that's successful. So I'd say winning, the National Ranger Challenge competition was probably a big highlight.
What was the greatest benefit for you, like the biggest takeaway or lesson that you learned?
Well, ROTC in and of itself is a leadership program. So, and I don't know, there's the age-old debate whether leaders are made or born, but I certainly think, everybody has a certain amount of innate leadership ability, but it can always be improved on. So, and it's not something that you get in high school, or a lot of times you don't get that many opportunities to truly lead or to really focus on improving leadership. So I think making myself a better leader was a big thing. But then just the opportunity to serve and to be part of the United States Army, which is pretty cool in and of itself. The opportunity to be part of something bigger than yourself, something that matters, to get a job when you're out of college that you feel like is important and useful and not just about yourself or the bottom line. Really, those are the long-term benefits of ROTC for me.
Did you get a scholarship while you were doing ROTC?
Yeah, so I went to college not knowing anything about ROTC, and then after the first year I ran out of money to pay for college. So I was walking across the campus and this guy yelled, "Hey, you!" And I'm like, "Ooh, me?" He's like, "Yeah, come here." There's a guy in uniform. Nobody in my family had been in the military, so I'm like, "What's up?" He's like, "You look like you're pretty fit. Can you do 50 push-ups?" So I'm like, "Yeah, I can, but I'm going to class." And so I start walking away. He's like, "Yeah, I figured you couldn't." So I'm like, "Okay." So I went back over there, threw down my backpack, knocked out 50 push-ups. He's like, "Good, follow me." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Follow me." So I did, strangely enough. He's like, and so I filled out the paperwork. Long story short, I got a 3-year scholarship.
What was the hardest part for you out of all ROTC?
So I think from a practical perspective, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and doing PT every day, since I was part of that Ranger Challenge thing and the way our school was set up, part of our program did PT 5 days a week at 6 o'clock in the morning. And this is in Minnesota, so it's cold and dark, and where I lived was half a mile from where we did PT. So, I mean, you really had to pride yourself getting out of bed. So that part, most college kids just don't get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then the leadership part, I think, is a challenge. I mean, it's teaching leadership, but it's also grading and evaluating leadership. So a lot of ROTC is a test, so to speak. And whenever you're put in charge, I mean, that puts a certain amount of pressure and onus and expectation of doing well, both on yourselves and your peers and your cadre. So I think being in charge was hard as well.
Was the transition after ROTC hard for you to go into the Army, or was it an easy transition?
Yeah, it was surprisingly easy. Again, not coming from a military family and really having almost no background knowledge of the Army. I didn't know what I was getting into. ROTC was one thing, doing the functions, learning that. But that's still not really the Army. And so showing up to the real Army, rolling into Fort Sill for OBC, I had no idea what I was getting into, but it wasn't a whole lot of apprehension, and it didn't seem that hard or that difficult. So I would say really the transition is pretty smooth. Then once you get to your first real assignment, probably the hardest part there is, you're 22, 23 years old or something, and you have guys working for you that have been in the Army for 15, 16 years, which to a young person seems like forever. And at that time, we had just come out of Desert Storm, so we had a lot of Desert Storm combat veterans, and you're like, how's this guy, this hardened warrior combat veteran who's been doing this for 15 years, how can I lead them? And that was a bit of a challenge, but other than that, just the transition to Army life wasn't hard at all, in my opinion.
Did you feel prepared to be an officer out of the program, or do you think you could have used more training?
No, I did feel prepared. I mean, prepared to go to officer basic leadership course, or the first training event that you go to learn your specialty. So I didn't feel like I was unprepared for that, but certainly there was a lot of growth there. A lot of, okay, this is the real Army. It's the first time you deal on a consistent basis with different ranks, particularly non-commissioned officers, and I mean, that course, Field Artillery Officer Basic course, really prepared me. So, because you got to learn your stuff, particularly, I'd say in all branches, but I feel as a artilleryman, you really need to know what you're doing when you're working with artillery, because it's one of the branches where you can get fired the easiest, because if you shoot outside the box, literally you get fired.
Yeah, for sure.
And even worse, you could, kill somebody.
If you did it all again, would you choose to like go into an academy or like enlist and then become an officer, or would you choose to do ROTC again?
No, I would definitely go the enlist and then become an officer route. Just my background, I mean, I was a farm kid. After high school, I worked at a paper mill for a year, starting out at the bottom. So it wasn't that I was unaccustomed to being at the bottom, but that's different than understanding what a private or specialist goes through. And I think you can add a lot of credibility to yourself as a leader, particularly as a junior officer if you've been enlisted. I think I would just take that opportunity to do the most crazy training, volunteer for every kind of stuff, go to Ranger School, go wherever, scratch all the itches that you have as a young guy, as an enlisted, and then go, whether it's green to gold or when your enlistment's up, and go into the ROTC program. To me, that's a great route, because then you really understand what your soldiers have gone through, what they're going through, what it's like. You understand NCO leadership better. I think that makes the best officer leadership.
If you were to give advice to a person going to the ROTC, like what would be like your number one piece of advice?
Number one piece of advice for somebody that's already planning to go into ROTC? Yeah. I think it's the same advice I've given almost everything, and that's do your best. Leave everything out on the field. Don't half step anything, because what you get out of it, what you put into it, and like everything else, there are always people that can slide by and whatever, whether it's on a basketball team in a high school class or in ROTC, there are people that aren't giving it the full measure of devotion. But I would say do that, because the more you put into it, the more you will get out of it. And the importance of being a good leader. I mean, you got to really think what it is you're signing up to do. I mean, you're leading the sons and daughters of America. And for my generation, I always said in combat, because we've been at 18, 19 years of persistent combat, and the vast majority of the officer leaders getting commissioned, certainly in the last, 15 years have gone to war. So understanding the importance of it, and, doing the absolute best that you can so that you get everything out of it. Because the program's set up for you to get what you need to answer these questions, to be prepared, to be good, to transition smoothly. I mean, the program works, but you got to take advantage of it too. So I would say that's the number one thing, and then just keep your options open. I think people go into a lot of things with either preconceived notions or kind of narrow plans. I say, okay, I'm going to join ROTC, but I'm going to just get a reserve commission, or I'm going to join ROTC and I only want to be an ordnance officer or something like that. Well, a lot of times it doesn't work like that. And I'm a prime example because I said those things, you know, and I really didn't plan to go active duty because, again, I didn't know what I was getting into. So, but the system, you know, works, and, you know, one day, yeah, I'm a senior in college, and the little old lady in tennis shoes in the office of the ROTC department calls me up and says, "Congratulations, you know, Petrowski, you got active duty field artillery." I said, whoa, that's not me. I asked for a reserve component, I don't know, you know, some kind of wussy branch. And she's like, "Oh no, it's you, and you're going to Fort Sill, whether you like it or not." And that's the way it is. But, you know, it turned out to be the best thing. I loved artillery, and I loved active duty, and so you really know, you don't know what's best. So whatever you get, make the most of it. And I, you know, having been an ROTC professor of military science, I had a lot of those cadets that just, I only want to be this flat-bellied, steely-eyed killers. I can't do anything else but infantry. And then they get quartermaster, and then they, you know, email me 4 years later going, "Hey, this is working out pretty well for me." And so you get, just kind of let, you know, whatever decisions are made for you, embrace them, and then make that the best decision for you.
Well, thank you for your time.
All
I
right.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so first, where did you do ROTC? What school?
I did ROTC at State University of New York, College at Cortland. It is upstate New York, about center mass in New York State, south of Syracuse, north of Binghamton. We were a small company at part of the Cornell University Battalion. So yeah, the program was not there that long, and it got smaller when I was there. It actually disappeared. Well, it was not removed, but it recently came back. But yeah, I went to SUNY Cortland. Yeah.
All right. Did you have a good experience overall?
I did. It was a fun group of people. As a matter of fact, the friends that I have from college are still from ROTC. Some of them didn't. They just wanted to do 2 years and get out, and they just wanted to do the rappelling and the field training exercises and stuff like that. And so there are a group of 6 of us that still get together, and it's been 31 years now. So yeah, so great people. We partied together. We went to classes together. The leadership of the officer staff was average. The officer staff was average. It was 88 to 92, so there was a rift going on, reduction in force. So there were a couple of captains who were a little angry, and they ended up getting rift. So that's when the Army did a reduction in force, and they paid people to get out. It's when the Army went from 18 divisions down to 10, like almost a 1 million man army to 700,000. So a lot of people. So there were a couple of captains that weren't so happy. The NCOs were fantastic. They would truly demonstrate the be, no, do. You know they were. That's their motto. You know, be, no, KNOW, and do. And they were definitely lead by example. We learned about all the field stuff from them. Mostly infantry. They were infantry first sergeants. Two of them went on to be sergeant majors. Another guy was SF. So their field craft was good. They taught us to be comfortable when we're uncomfortable. Upstate New York, going in the field, November, December, January, February, March, it sucks. Can suck, but we learned, even with the old school equipment, old field jackets, old, crappy stuff, we still learned to it. What else? So I also did Ranger Challenge Group, which was made it a little tougher. So we did PT every day. We did rappelling. We did rope bridges. You build a rope bridge, you go across the stream. We did foot marching, which I like walking in the woods. So it was just, yeah, I enjoyed it. Field training exercises were always fun. Movement to contact, raids, recons, ambushes. It was all good time. You have an M60 machine gun and lots of ammo, pyro. What could be,
Yeah, sounds like a good time.
Right, it was a good time. I enjoyed physical training. We did that every day, and so I enjoyed. It was probably the best experience in college. Yeah.
Out of all those experiences, what was your favorite, the best out of all of them?
One particular exercise I got to be out for with a small group, and we got to set up an ambush, and it was my buddy was on the machine gun, and it was the guys really, because we learned to camouflage ourselves, and they were walking right down the street, or right down the path, didn't see us, and we opened up with a 60, and my buddy rock and rolled down the 60. So one of the best memories is us decimating the other squad, or squad plus. It was fun. Yeah, that's so one of the field exercises. Yeah.
Out of all like that you took away from it, like what was like the greatest benefit that like helped you the most?
So the way I take it is, so I got a commission as a second lieutenant in the infantry. That was the benefit. I was gonna be a school teacher. I got my degree, but ROTC and the Army allowed me to leave New York State, go see the world, be in the infantry. I got to jump out of planes, rappel out of helicopters, do all the infantry stuff. I fired all kinds of Mark 19s, 50 cals, AT4s. So the benefit was, I was not a scholarship guy, but I still got to go active duty infantry and had a great time. Another benefit, like I said, was meeting the friends that I still have today, and then it was the stepping stone for me to start my career. So I guess it gave me a career. It gave me a focus. I didn't have to search for a job. I had a job and did it for 21 years. Yeah.
I know you just said that you didn't get a scholarship, but like, did you apply for them? Were they hard to get when you were applying for them?
When I was in high school, I had no idea how to apply for them. Didn't even know about it. So I immediately missed out on the 4-year. When I was in freshman year, I applied for a 3-year scholarship, but I didn't do so well. In freshman year, I got like a 2.25 or something, and there was no way I was going to get it. So I was just an obligated volunteer with a 3-year commitment. It was fine. Instead, I joined the National Guard while I was in, which also helped me because I was in the SMP program after I went to AIT. So I went to basic training the summer of freshman year, and AIT, I went to medic school the summer of sophomore year, and so then I became a cadet. When I signed the contract at the fall of my junior year, I learned to be a platoon leader in my National Guard unit, which was right down the road. So it worked. So ROTC worked hand in hand with the Guard. Yeah, so it was good. Yeah.
What was the hardest part overall, like most difficult and challenging?
So for me, not the knuckle dragger, learning doctrine without having any military experience. My parents were never military, had no idea. So learning doctrine back in the day, Moss Mouse and all these other law of land warfare, but I mean actually putting it into practice, I found that difficult. Others I know, getting up for PT every day was an absolute killer for them, and then others, there were some, I can't say less motivated, but they didn't enjoy being out in the field as much, and they hated the field training exercise, especially foot marching and being cold and wet. They definitely, I didn't mind it. The toughest thing for me was learning the doctrine without being able to see it and put it into practice. But yeah, a lot of people would say getting up at PT. We did PT at 06, I think, Monday through Friday, and yeah, some people didn't appreciate it.
Was the transition hard from ROTC to the Army? Like, was there a lot of big differences that were a big change?
So we were a small program with So the transition, no, I didn't find it that difficult. So going in the infantry, ROTC pretty much, all the leadership classes, or the way they taught leadership was doing infantry stuff, movement to contact, raids, recons, ambushes. And so going to the infantry, no, it wasn't bad. I mean, I had enough military bearing. I knew who to salute, who not to salute. I knew customs and courtesies. I went at a high, because I'm a nervous Nelly, all I did was PT before I went in the Army. All I did was freaking PT, push-ups, sit-ups, and run, and foot march. So I was ready, I was mentally, I was physically ready, mentally ready, and so no, the transition, and you're down there with all second lieutenants, learning the same thing, going through the same deal. So no, I thought transition from ROTC to the Army was easy. Yeah.
Did you feel prepared to be an officer after ROTC, like leading a bunch of guys, or like?
So, no, no, I did not. I felt somewhat prepared. I could have used more hands-on leadership. We were a small program. I think the highest I was a squad leader, because we were, by the time I was a senior, I think we had a platoon. So, I mean, we were really small. And so I think more hands-on leadership experiences would have helped. More discussions about the actual career. I had no idea, so I knew. Yeah, I would be as a second lieutenant. I'd be in the infantry. I would be a platoon leader, and then an XO, and then company commander. I knew the steps, but I really didn't know what was expected of me, like writing OERs, MTOERs, the evaluation forms, counseling. I had all the basic. I knew I was an expert at land nav. I was an expert at doing the, setting up weapons, assembly, disassembly. At the basic level tasks, I was ready to be a private. I was ready. Plus, so on a positive thing, I also knew the troop leading procedures. Anyway, troop leading procedures. It's all the things you need to do before you pass the line of departure. And the op order, I knew it, and things like that, yes. But the actual, what's important to a battalion commander, what's important to a brigade commander, that, and maybe I missed it, but no, I think, besides excelling in PT and shooting straight and making sure my guys are in the right uniform and ready for training, no, I do not think I had enough preparation. And it could have been, it was probably me too, college kid. I just didn't know. I didn't know any better. Yeah. Yeah.
If you did it all again, if you could choose, if you went to a military academy, or if you just enlisted, would you change it up?
So, if my grades were better, maybe I could have gotten into a West Point in the 80s, maybe. I don't think I could have gotten it today. But if I had a chance to do it over and I could get it in, I would go for West Point first, then try for the ROTC scholarship. The National Guard did help me. It helped me teach me exactly what was wrong. Yeah, because they taught me to drive armored personnel carriers with no license, and at night with no night vision device, and put beer under the floorboards in our armored personnel carrier. So I learned a lot of good things. So I did learn some leadership things, like don't do that. And so I would pick military academy, then ROTC, because, which kind of leads into 10. Well, because the military academy, you hear the ring knockers. It is, it's not only ring, it's a network, and it is strong, and they take care of each other, and it makes, as you go up in rank, it makes a difference. Having the right, doing well in your job, having the right jobs, but it also helps if you've gone to college with, if you went to college with, and you've known them for 20 something, you know, known these people for 18, 20 years, it helps get, in any job, as a PM, as a program manager, or as a battalion commander, or as a staff officer, if you know people, it helps smooth things over to get you in the door, and you're given the extra chance. It helps with promotions, help with getting jobs. Yeah, so I think if I were to recommend somebody and they wanted to go career, then I would recommend West Point right off the bat. Yeah, number 1, 2nd ROTC, and 3 I guess OCS, but yeah. Yep.
So do you have any other advice to give about ROTC, about the program? Like,
Sure. So I would recommend learn as much as you can from the officers, NCOs. Learn about the daily life and training cycles, the daily life of a soldier, of a platoon leader, what's important to battalion commanders, what's important to brigade commanders. Learn about doctrine, learn about all the different branches and what they do and how they support. Learn about the politics, learn about, read the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA. So it shows, you know, at a strategic level, it shows where the country's headed. So I mean, if you read it a few years ago, it was more focused on non-state actors and you know, other bad guys. Now it's focused on near peer, you know, China, Russia, Iran, and it talks about all those. So it's, I think, so at the basic level, learn from the NCOs, the officers, what's going on, but then also know a little bit about the strategy, the national defense strategy. And then for yourself also, you know, go at a high state of readiness. Be able to run 2 to 5 miles, be able to foot march a few miles, and with a 35-pound pack. You know, this is me old school talking to who knows, you know, my information's old, and then being able to do push-ups and sit-ups. It just showing up just makes it so much easier for you. You're already, you know, it's just one less thing you have to worry about. Yeah.
okay. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Start with, where did you do ROTC?
I went to Penn State, and I was in the Nittany Lion Brigade. At that time, it was a brigade, so the program was pretty big, and we commissioned usually between 60 and 70 Army lieutenants every year.
Interesting. Did you have a good experience overall?
Fantastic. Yeah, overall, I had a really excellent experience.
What was your favorite experience out of all 4 years?
I don't know if I could pin down one particular experience, but the thing that I like to do, actually it was one experience that we like to do best, and the time that I remember things being the most fun is when we were the MS4s and we were the cadre for the program, and we were running an FTX, and we were running the land navigation lanes and the leadership lanes and different things, and we were actually the cadre on the radio and setting everything up and coordinating all the logistics and all the training details. And that was actually a lot of fun.
Out of all like the benefits and lessons that you learned, what was like your greatest benefit of doing ROTC?
One of the big advantages to me of doing ROTC was like Penn State's a really big school. There were 35,000 undergraduates, and so that became kind of my group of like to bring the university down to a smaller level. That became the group of friends that I hung out with a lot, and we did a lot of things together outside of the ROTC program. Yeah.
Did you get a scholarship? And if you did, how long was it?
I did. I got a 4-year scholarship, which is the primary reason I did ROTC in the first place. I didn't know very much at all about the Army, and I wanted the money for school, and I thought this is a great way to pay for school. I can do 4 years in the Army. How hard could that be? And after I was in the Army for 4 years, I found that I really enjoyed it, and I continued on and stayed in the Army for 21 years. So yes, I had a 4-year scholarship coming out of high school.
What was the hardest part of ROTC?
I think probably the hardest part of ROTC was summer camp. Yeah, it was probably summer camp. Most of the high school students or college students nobody really been. For me, I did it at Fort Bragg, and I'd never been that far south before. I was from New York, so it was hotter and harder and drier, and you got to integrate with all kinds of different people from all over the country and do all that challenging stuff.
What was like the most challenging for you though? Like the part which you just like, it sucked to be in, but like you had to do it.
The thing that I liked the least was marksmanship. I really wasn't very good at it. I never had fired any kind of weapon at all, and I lacked confidence, wasn't comfortable, in the prone position, and I didn't have any background with it, and that was the thing that I disliked the most, really.
Was the transition from ROTC into the Army hard, or did you find it easy?
Actually, it was kind of hard. I ended up branching engineer because my major was geography, and the cartographic branch of the Army is in the engineers. So I was in the engineers, and I ended up, my first duty assignment was Germany, and I ended up in a unit that had mostly West Point Academy graduates, and I was one of, I don't even know if there were any other ROTC graduates, lieutenants in that cohort, or even the couple of years ahead of me. There might have been one or two, but so it was sort of challenging because when they got to the unit, they really they had a better understanding of the Army writ large, and I think that you can't really, as a lieutenant, you cannot compare, and it would be irrational to expect a ROTC lieutenant and an academy lieutenant to be at the same level as a second lieutenant, because one has been living that for 4 years and one has been doing, or in ROTC we met, for the first 2 years we met once a week, and then for the second 2 years we met twice a week as opposed to every day. So and that levels out after a while, and after a couple of years it flattens out. But for me, being in a unit where all of my cohorts were really well versed in how the Army worked, how NCOs, how to interface with NCOs, all the engineering background, because we were a construction engineer company or battalion at that point, as a construction engineer battalion. So I really had to scramble to catch up. So what was the question? was it a hard transition?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a hard transition. It was, and I moved from the basic course directly to catch up with my platoon, which was already downrange on a construction site. They already had begun this huge it was the largest military construction Army project in the Army at that time. It was a tank gunnery range that had over 2 battalions working on it for 3 years, and I caught up with my platoon there. I met them there. They already had begun the project, and I had to learn the project and learn the soldiers and learn the equipment and really kind of all of it all at once. So yeah.
After ROTC, were you prepared to be an officer? Like, were you prepared to lead others? Like, were you confident, or like did you have to gain that through?
As I said, I was technically ready, but no, I didn't have as much experience with that as I would have liked to have. No, and I guess that's just the nature of the program, the way it's set up.
If you did it all again, would you choose another path, like going to an academy or like enlisting and becoming an officer?
No, I probably would do just the same thing. I really would. I enjoyed every bit of it. I was, as I said, at a little bit of a disadvantage at the beginning, it leveled out over time. I would have liked to go to an academy maybe, but I really, really loved my college experience, and I wouldn't really be willing to trade that. So I'm very, very satisfied with the way things worked out for me and the way my choices panned out. I would do that again.
What advice would you give to somebody going into ROTC?
I would say, first of all, take it a little more seriously than I did when I was in ROTC. It was an extracurricular for me for a while, until like the last year, and then you start to get more serious about it. But what I didn't realize, at the beginning, actually for almost till the very end, is where you get stationed and what you get branched and all depend not only on what your major is and what your desires are, but really the OML too. And I had no interest in fighting to be at the top of the OML, to get my branch of choice or anything. It was, sheer good luck that I ended up in Germany, but I ended up in Germany with like the top of the class out of the academy because they all got to pick their overseas selection. So take it more seriously, and then I would say look at the ROTC program before you look at your school. If you know you're going to be ROTC, like I said, we had a robust program right there at the academy. We had plenty of people to have real training and have a variety of different options, like we had Pershing rifles or yearbook or rangers or all the other things there. And there were enough people that when you became the platoon leader or the company commander, you were leading more than just a handful of people. And I think that added to the experience. So that's
Okay.
what I would think about.
Thank you for your time and telling me about your ROTC experience.
You're welcome, and I'm glad you're going to do it. I think you'll really enjoy it.
Where did you do ROTC?
I did my ROTC out of Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It was an engineering school in Worcester, Massachusetts. I actually didn't go to school at Worcester Polytech. I went to school at Nichols College, which was probably about, 15 miles away, 15 or 20 miles away, and I used to have to drive up there to do my leadership labs, which that's where you go once a week, and for about 4 hours you do a whole bunch of Army type stuff. They teach you to march, they teach you classes on different things to do, how to wear the uniform, how to be in formation, all different topics, land navigation, a bunch of stuff like that. The actual classes for ROTC, they sent instructors down to my school to go ahead and instruct us down there. But when we did go and we met with a battalion, which is multiple schools, there was probably, they would call WPI, which is Worcester Polytech, they would call that the home program, and then they had extension colleges, which one of mine was an extension college. They had College of the Holy Cross, Clark University, all these different things that they would all come to WPI on Thursdays and do leadership lab.
Would you say you had a good experience overall?
Overall, I think my experience was good. I loved, I liked ROTC. I liked learning about the Army. I was very interested in the Army when I joined ROTC. So my experience was great. I always tried to get into any of the extra things that they were doing. Sometimes I joined a group called the Pershing Rifles, and the Pershing Rifles was kind of a group that did more infantry in the field, which means out in the woods, fighting type of training, as well as drill and ceremony with rifles. And we got to wear extra things on our uniforms. We got a special cord. We actually wore a beret instead of the normal caps that everybody else had, because we did a lot of extra stuff to basically learn tactics and stuff like that. We liked that.
What was your favorite experience overall?
My favorite experience in ROTC, let's see. My favorite experience probably was doing all the extra stuff at school. I enjoyed doing the extra stuff at school. We would go on these things called field training exercises, and the acronym for that is FTX, field training exercise. And we had one FTX that was really cool. We were gonna go to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and our professor of military science, who was a colonel, had talked to some aviators from a National Guard unit, and they actually brought in Huey helicopters onto the football field at WPI, and all the ROTC cadets loaded into the helicopters, and they flew us up into Fort Devens, and then we all sat down in the field, and we got off like Air Mobile, and we went out on our FTX. We did our FTX on Friday night, Saturday night, and then Sunday they picked us up in the landing zone, and we all got on the helicopters, and then we came out, landed on the football field, and of course all the other students who are at the school are looking at this like, wow, this is really cool, because like these guys who go to our school are coming in helicopters and, you know, doing kind of cool stuff.
Sounds like a great time.
Mm-hmm.
What was your greatest benefit of ROTC?
I would say that I had several benefits of ROTC. So when I first decided I was going to join ROTC was the end of my first semester freshman year. And I had seen a flyer at the student union, and it said, you know, if you're interested in the Army, you know, show up on this day, and it was like a Tuesday night or something like that, and we're going to give out free pizza, and we're going to have some Army officers here that are going to talk to you about joining ROTC and about, you know, your opportunities in the Army. So I showed up because I was a lover of pizza, and I'm like, hey, free pizza, I'm going. So went down there, and it sounded cool because Army stuff, and I had always heard about the Army because my father was in the Army, and he talked about it his whole life. You know, it was like he's only in 3 years, and he talked about it all the time. So I went there, and I met a captain who was there, and basically I liked what I heard, and I said, you know what, I want to join this thing. And so one of the first things I had to do before I could join is I had to go up to Worcester, which is where WPI was, and they had a VA hospital up there, and I had to take a physical. So I went in there and took a physical, and I had really put on some weight at school since I got there, and I was kind of a heavier kid in high school, and in order to be in the Army, you have to be kind of light. You have to meet weight standards, and you have to be within certain standards, and I was way over the weight standards. So I weighed in, at that time, I was 252 pounds. So, and I was 18 years old. So I'm 252 pounds, 18 years old, 6'5". And one of the great benefits I think that ROTC gave me was it got me into good physical shape. It kind of set a goal for me to go ahead and get myself into shape. Started running and push-ups and sit-ups and calisthenics, and lifted a little bit of weight, started doing chin-ups, all this different stuff. And I started second semester, and by May 1st of second semester, I went from 252 to 220. So I lost 32 pounds doing all that stuff. And then a year from then, I went from 220 to 194. I was 194 pounds. I was 6'5", 194 pounds. Wearing a medium or large shirt. Couldn't make it into extra large, it'd be way too baggy. They had actually chosen me to, at that point, because I was really taking to the whole ROTC thing. They chose me to go to airborne school, and that's when I finished at like 194. So I would definitely say got me into physical shape. That was a big thing. Also the leadership that you get out of it. You learn to take charge of people, and while some people, even with sports and so forth, they get taking charge of people. They've done it before and stuff like that. Being able to come up with a plan and being able to lead people to do something and having them actually listen to you, to be able to speak to them in such a way that they want to do what you're asking them to do is kind of it's a great skill to have, and it's something that ROTC works on, and not only ROTC, but the whole military is all about leadership. So it's like the name of the game is leadership as an Army officer, not as an Army soldier. Army soldiers more are going to do what they're told by their leaders, so they're more followers. Until they learn something and become a non-commissioned officer, which is a sergeant, they start to get their leadership there. But officers have to come in ready to lead, and at least being able to somewhat lead, and then they spend the rest of their whole careers sharpening their leadership skills, because it's a continuous learning process of learning to lead people and different people and stuff like that. So I would say the two greatest things I got out of ROTC was the physical part, getting in shape, and the leadership part were the two greatest things.
Did you get a scholarship for doing ROTC?
I did get a scholarship. I never applied for an ROTC scholarship because I didn't join until going into my second semester of my first year. So I never applied for a 4-year scholarship. So when I joined, I applied for a 3-year scholarship and I didn't get it. And then the following year, after I'd spent a full year in the battalion and I was doing all the extra things, and the chain of command really liked me because I was a guy who was always wanting to go out and do tactical stuff, and whenever we did that, I was always pretty gung-ho with all that stuff, and they must have seen something, and so I was awarded a 2-year scholarship, so I had to pay for my first 2 years of college myself, and then the Army paid for my second 2 years of college.
What was the hardest part of all of your ROTC, all 4 years?
The hardest part, I would say, one of the hard parts I'd say was getting into shape at first. When I first started doing that, that was tough. It's tough to lose 59 pounds, but I did it. And was able to participate. Other than that, I didn't really think it was that hard. It wasn't that hard. I took to the classes pretty well. I understood land navigation and orienteering pretty well, and that's working with a map and compass. I totally understood all the first aid stuff. I understood as soon as they told me how to maneuver men in the field. I could picture it in my head, and so I had no problem really explaining my ideas or telling people what I wanted them to do and how we were going to do something. I never had any problem with making a plan. I could always make a plan rather quickly. And move out and do stuff. So the physical part was tough. Sometimes taking charge and getting evaluated was tough, because sometimes you would be placed into a situation like where they put you in charge. They just pick you, and they say, you know, McCall, you're in charge. You're now the platoon leader, and here's your mission. This is what you're going to do, and you need to do it in 15 minutes. And at advanced camp, which is the premier training event that they do in between your junior and senior year in college, after you supposedly have been in ROTC for 3 years and training, and you come up to this event and they send you away and you go to an army post. I went to Fort Bragg, and you go down there in the summertime and you're there for 6 weeks, and for 6 weeks they're placing you from one leadership position to another and continuously evaluating you on how you're doing, what you're doing, how you're doing. And they don't do it in the easiest of circumstances. I mean, this stuff is in the field, so it's going to be, you know, you're going to be out in the woods, living in the woods in North Carolina is where I was. So you're in the woods in North Carolina. You're from Massachusetts, that's where I was from. So our hot summer days were maybe mid-80s, upper 80s. You know, we'd get maybe 2 weeks in the 90s, and that was it. North Carolina in mid-July was unbelievable. Like, it was hot as heck. And they just have you go outside for days on end, and what you do is you end up walking all day, doing all this army stuff all day, and you get sweaty, and you don't get to take a shower, and you got to pee in the woods, and you know, and at nighttime when you stop, you have to take out a small shovel and you have to dig a hole, so you're spending time digging a hole, and that's where you sleep in the hole. And then you get up the next day and you keep doing it. So, you know, they're trying to stress you out to see, under stress, how do you lead? Under stress, how do you react? So you're dirty, you're hot, you're sweaty, you're hungry, and they're asking you to do tough things, and to plan missions for other people to do tough things. And they want to see whether you just kind of throw your hands up, whether you develop an attitude, whether you aren't able to lead in those types of conditions and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, that stuff was tough, but I never at any point felt that I could not do it. I always thought I could do it, and I always thought I was at least as good as the people who were around me. I wasn't any worse leader than they were. Was I perfect? Absolutely not. Were they? No, they were not either. But I was as good as any guy that was down there, and I knew I wasn't going to do, you know, any worse. And at that point, I was in great physical shape too. So.
Was the transition from ROTC into the military hard for you?
I didn't find the transition to be hard at all. ROTC did a real good job. I think they did a great job at WPI and at the battalion of preparing us to have the right stuff and to know quite a bit of valuable information. When I was commissioned May of 1988. The day I was commissioned, the day I graduated from college, I was commissioned as a lieutenant, so given my rank, and then, but what happens is you don't just get released into the force and you're just a leader all of a sudden, like boom, you're just a leader. What happens is you get sent to your basic officer course, okay? So it's called Officer Basic Course, and for whatever your job's gonna be, they send you to certain schools. If you're going to be infantry, they send you to Fort Benning, Georgia. If you're going to be artillery, they send you to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. If you're going to be intelligence, they send you to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. You know, I went to Fort McClellan, Alabama. I was branched as a chemical officer at first, which is nuclear, biological, chemical. So, you know, you get there and you're with a bunch of other lieutenants that are coming from schools all over the country. They've been commissioned all over the country, plus West Pointers. And they all come there, and we're all in the same school now. And what they're doing is they're teaching you your basic job, what your part of being in the Army is going to be. You know, if you're an infantry officer, that means fighting on the ground with a rifle. If you're an armor officer, you're in the tank. So infantry officers learn how to maneuver on the ground and tankers learned to maneuver in tanks, and aviators flew the helicopters, and field artillerymen learned how to shoot the guns and have the bullets land where they're supposed to go. Chemical officers learned how to protect whatever unit they were assigned to from chemical warfare in case anybody wanted to use chemical warfare. They learned how to also train whatever unit they got sent to in the use of all the chemical gear. If a nuclear bomb went off, we learned how to do downwind hazard prediction. So a nuclear bomb goes off, goes up, the fallout's going to go somewhere, and that's all radioactive fallout. So if a bomb went off, we'd be able to go ahead, and we had tools that predicted exactly where the nuclear fallout would go and how much there would be, so that we could protect our force, either recover people or we'd have to move them out of the fallout zone, you know, because we knew where it was going to go. But after Officer Basic Course, I think Officer Basic Course really prepared us to go ahead and enter the force. So I had everything in ROTC, you know, 4 years worth of stuff going on at school, and then I got 6 months of this is how you're supposed to do it when you get to your unit. And I was already in the Army, getting paid, wearing the uniform every single day. So, and then you go from there to a real unit where you're really in a war fighting unit. And that's when you first, you know, start doing your first real Army stuff. And I thought I was very well prepared to do that. Did I learn a lot once I got there? Of course. But I thought I was as prepared as anybody. And in fact, I thought I was better prepared than a lot of people. I watched people wash out of Officer Basic Course. They came from ROTC programs, or because we weren't the infantry, we weren't the armor, we weren't learning about tanks, we weren't learning about rifles, we were learning about nuclear warfare, chemical warfare, biological warfare. And there was a lot of math, believe it or not, in sitting there figuring out the predictions of exactly where stuff was going. It was called RAD, radiation. So during the RAD part, I remember we lost a guy. He took the test 3 times. He just couldn't get it. Couldn't get the stuff, and they basically put him out of the Army. Took his commission, put him out of the Army. So kind of tough. I was glad that I had gotten a good education, and I was glad that that ROTC had prepared me so well when I got there. But yeah.
Were you prepared to like be an officer and like lead? I know you like touched on like you were going out, but like when you got to your unit, were you ready like completely to lead others? Did you like feel confident in that position?
I did. I felt confident. I felt confident when I got out there. You know, it wasn't, you know, that I sat out there and I just said, oh, I know how to do everything. But I didn't feel unconfident. I mean, I wasn't afraid. I was never questioning whether I was going to be able to do it. I always thought I could do it. And, you know, I had done it before. I had led people in training. So once I got to my unit, you know, I led people there. And you also have people there also who are going to help you out with some things if you have questions on things like that. You know, sometimes you have time to make decisions and sometimes you don't have time to make decisions. So that's when you don't have time, it's going to be more on you. You know, you're going to have to come up with a plan and just tell people what the plan is. If you have a little bit more time, sometimes if you have a trusted person that's there, and usually in the Army that's going to be a non-commissioned officer, it's going to be a sergeant, who they've paired you with, who's been in the Army for maybe a decade, you can ask him. And you can say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. And he'll say, yeah, it's a great idea, sir. You know, maybe we should just, you know, that's great, but maybe we should do this too. And you do that, you know, it's pretty easy.
If you did it all over again, would you take a different route, or would you do ROTC? Like, would you go to an academy or like enlist and then become an officer?
No, I would do it ROTC for sure. If I was to do it all over again, I would have tried a little harder in high school to get a little better grades. And I would have put in for a 4-year scholarship, so they would have paid for the whole thing. Instead of just 2 years, I would have tried to get 4 years out of it. I don't think I would have done anything different from what I did, because while I was a cadet, I tried to volunteer for everything, any extra tactical training I could get, extra land navigation, you know, any extra little classes they had coming up, I always took them. I volunteered to go to airborne schools, so I went to paratrooper school when in the summertime between my sophomore and junior year. So I already had airborne wings as soon as they pinned my bars on and made me an officer. So no, I would do ROTC. That's the way to go, because I got my full college experience. So I lived a normal college experience. I didn't live in a barracks in a soldier type way. I lived in a dormitory with a bunch of kids who weren't going to the military. They were going to the civilian world afterwards. So I got kind of a normal college experience, and and I also got my military experience. And I could kind of fit that in and kind of meld both of those, and I think it's a great mix.
What advice would you give to somebody going into ROTC?
Someone going to ROTC, I would say prepare early if you know you're going to go. Start looking at the Army and what they do. Know something about the Army. Go ahead, read something about the Army. There's plenty of magazines out there. There's plenty of places you can go for information on the Army. Start thinking about what you want to do when you get in the Army. What you want to branch. Get yourself in good shape. Okay, it's better to already be in shape and stay in shape than it is to try to get into shape. And I saw that because, I lost almost 60 pounds, and I needed to lose, I think, 45 or 50, and I ended up losing 59. Take advantage of everything that they offer. Don't do the bare minimum. If they have a special group in there, Recondo, Ranger Challenge, do it. Do the Ranger Challenge. What else you got to do? Might as well. Because you're going to learn a lot of things in there that are going to help you when you get into the regular Army. And it'll be stuff you've already seen and done. It's always better to be doing something for the second time than it is to be doing it for the first time. It's always better to have seen it before than to be actually in the situation, in the real Army, and this is the first time you've ever seen anything like this. And it helps you with your confidence because you've already done it. So I would say take advantage of everything, get in good shape, start getting in shape, doing the PT, see what the PT test is for the service, and start practicing for it so that you're decent at it when you get there. Other than that, ROTC, apply for the scholarships. They got to give them to somebody. I'm a perfectly good example of that. They gave me a 2-year. I just kept asking for it. I asked for the 3-year, didn't get it. Asked for the 2-year, got it. My grades were okay. They're pretty good. But my enthusiasm and my motivated attitude, I guess, in the ROTC battalion had a lot to do with the scholarship, because the guys who were there, the cadre, they said, geez, look, McCall really, is fully into this. He's ready to go. He wants to go. He can't wait to be an officer. He's trying to make himself the best he can be, so that he'll be good when he's in the Army.
Okay, thank you.